So in this video, we're going to combine our understanding of scales, major scales and minor scales, with our understanding of triads, especially different qualities of triads, major, minor, and in this case, diminished. Of course, we have augmented triads, but those won't be part of what we talk about here for reasons you'll see in just a little bit here. Now, when we talk about diatonic triads, we're talking about triads that exist, that normally exist within the key that we're talking about. And the word diatonic, of course, means, notes that exist within that scale or within that key. And when we're talking about major keys or major scales, that's easily figured out by just looking at the key signatures or thinking about the key signature that goes along with that scale or that key. Diatonic pitches in major are those that adhere to the key signature. We can say the same thing about diatonic triads in minor, but there's a little more to that. Remember, in minor, because we have three forms of minor, natural minor, harmonic minor, and melodic minor, when we take that sixth scale degree and that seventh scale degree, there are times, of course, when you raise them to get to those other kinds of minor. Those examples of raised pitches, raised sixths or raised sevenths, because they are part of those types of minor scales, even though they're not represented or reflected in the key signature, we would still consider those diatonic. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at the diatonic triads and their qualities that exist in major scales and minor scales, and we'll also use that as a way to introduce Roman numerals, which are really important to harmonic analysis, and we'll see how they're reflected in our diatonic chords. So here we're going to figure out what the diatonic triad qualities are in major keys, and recognizing that even though I'm using the example here, what we come up with is going to be pretty universal for all major keys. So what I've done is I've presented the example in G major. Now I know it's G major, even though I've omitted the key signature. I purposely left that out because I just want to kind of make sure I get my hands all the way into the notes that I'm working with. G major has one sharp in the key signature. That sharp is F sharp. So this series of chords here actually reflects that, because all the notes are natural, except every time an F shows up, I've gone ahead and made it a sharp. So that's how I know that even though I don't have a key signature, I'm working within the key of G major. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out the qualities of each of these chords, right? So what is the quality of a triad based on the tonic, on the supertonic, and so on as we go down the line, right? So one thing to keep in mind, that each of these notes in the scale gets its own triad. So even though the submediant is the sixth scale degree, I can build a triad on that so that this sixth scale degree serves as the root of its very own chord, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out those qualities now, okay? And we're also going to talk about Roman numerals, which is second too. But let's go ahead and start with our first one, okay? So I'm building a chord on the tonic pitch, which I can then also call the tonic triad. Okay, and I'm just going to build that the way I build any other triad. I'm going to look at the quality of the fifth, and I see that it's a perfect fifth, and I see that that perfect fifth is framing a major third. So it turns out that in major keys, the tonic triad is going to be major. Okay, and in fact, if I take a look here, that's not going to be my only major triad. If I skip ahead to the triad based on the fourth scale degree, I see that in this case it's a C, right? And that C is framed by forms a frame with a perfect fifth, and it frames a major third. So the fourth chord in a major key is also going to be major, as will be the fifth chord, or the chord based on the dominant. Okay, so this will also be a major, and I know that again because I've looked at the fifth, perfect fifth, to a major third. Okay, and so I know that my major chords in major keys include the tonic, the subdominant chord, and the dominant chord. And here you see I've repeated the tonic. It's the same chord, just at another octave. So I may as well go ahead and label that as well. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to see what some of these other ones are. If I look at the supertonic, I look at the fifth here, the A to the E is a perfect fifth, but the A to the C is actually a minor third. So it turns out that the triads based on the second scale degree in major scales are actually going to be minor. Right? So the supertonic chord or the chord based on the second scale degree would be minor. So will the one based on the mediant. Okay, and I can do that same calculation, looking at the fifth and the third to figure that out. And then the same with the submediant. Okay, and then now when I come over to the leading tone chord, something else happens here. I have my F sharp, which is a leading tone in the key of G, and then that goes up to a C, but that's not a perfect fifth. That's actually a diminished fifth. It's a tritone, right? So it's a diminished fifth that frames a minor third. And we know from triads that when I have a diminished fifth with a minor third in the middle, that's actually a diminished triad. Okay, so the chord based on the 7th scale degree or based on T or based on the leading tone is a little bit of an outlier with respect to the rest of them because it's actually going to be the basis of a diminished triad. Okay, so those are my chord qualities, but it'd be nice if I had a way to kind of do this in a way that I'm not always saying, okay, the dominant chord, the median chord, and that's where these Roman numerals come in. I'm going to label all of these chords with a Roman numeral that has something to do with its scale degree, right? So the Roman numeral I'll use for a tonic chord is going to be a 1. The one I use for the leading tone chord will be a Roman numeral 7. I'll use a Roman numeral 3 to represent the median, but I'm going to include more detail than just the scale degree that serves as the basis of the chord. I'm also going to write the Roman numeral in a way that kind of telegraphs its quality. So whenever I have my major chords, I'm going to write that Roman numeral as a capital, right? So I'll do that here. I'll write a capital 1 to represent a major chord for my tonic triad in major keys. I'm going to write a capital 4 for my subdominant, and I'll just pause here to remind us that this is a subdominant not based on its relationship to the dominant, but based on its relationship to the tonic. It's subdominant because it's a dominant or a fifth below the tonic, right? That's kind of sometimes a misconception. But understand that also helps us understand the role of the submedian, right? How is it a submedian even though it's a scale degree that's higher than the median? Well, because it doesn't have anything to do with the median. It has to do with the tonic. Remember, all of these scale degree kind of names here relate somehow to the tonic. The median is a third above the tonic, right? Median kind of means third, more or less. And the submedian is sub because it's a third below the tonic. So just kind of an aside there, right? So, okay, anyways, back to my Roman numerals. Because I have minor chords, right, that show up as diatonic triads in major on the 2nd scale degree chord, 3rd scale degree chord based on the 2nd scale degree, the 3rd scale degree, and the 6th scale degree, I'm going to use a lowercase Roman numeral. So for my supertonic chord in major keys, that's going to be represented by a lowercase Roman numeral 2 because it's a minor triad. The median chord is also a minor triad in major keys, so that'll be represented by a lowercase Roman numeral 3. And the submedian is going to be a lowercase 6. And oh, looks like I forgot to label my 5 chord here. That's going to be major as well. And then my tonic, I'm going to repeat that one there. And then my leading tone chord. Now this is a little bit of a different case, right? Because it's that diminished triad. So the way we use Roman numerals to represent diminished triads is we're still going to write them as lowercase. So this is going to be a lowercase 7, but I need some way to distinguish that lowercase from the lowercase I use for minor triads. So I'm going to add that diminished symbol to the 7. That kind of, it's like a degree symbol. It's just a superscript like O kind of right there. And that tells me that I'm dealing with a diminished triad. Okay, so these are the diatonic triads and the representations for major keys. And again, this applies not just to G major, but to all major keys. And whenever I'm working in a major key, I know that the chord based on my submedian, for example, or what I'll call my 6th chord, I know that that's going to be minor in every major key. Okay, I know that the 4 chord and the 5 chord are both going to be major triads whenever I'm talking about a major key, right? So again, these are the diatonic triads in major, and now let's see what they look like in minor. So here we have a series of diatonic triads in minor, and I just want to kind of point out that, remember, we have various forms of minor. We have natural minor, we have harmonic minor, we have melodic minor, and those variations depend on what we do at the 6th scale degree or the 7th scale degree, whether we raise it or not from the key signature. But what I have in front of us now are the chords that most commonly occur in minor keys, right? So, and what I've done here, just like I use G major to illustrate the diatonic major triads, I'm going to use its relative E minor to illustrate the most common diatonic triads in minor keys. So here we go. So I'm going to start with my tonic triad. Again, the tonic is E because I'm writing in E minor, and I can see that based on, the different accidentals that show up along the way. My tonic pitch is E, and then I look a fifth above that. That's a perfect fifth, encompassing a minor third. So that's going to be a minor triad. And we learned with Roman numerals that will represent that. In this case, our 1 chord will be represented by a lowercase Roman numeral. So in minor keys, the 1 chord is a lowercase. Our supertonic, we have our root of the chord, which is the 2nd scale degree. F sharp in this case going up to C is actually a diminished fifth with a minor third in the middle, so that is actually a diminished triad. Okay, and so we got a 2 chord. Remember that we're going to use lowercase for diminished triads. but we also, because it's diminished, we add in that circle there. So our 2 chords in minor keys are usually going to appear as diminished triads. Our 3 chords, if we continue on down, will be major, right? And I can do that just by checking the analysis here. G to D, perfect fifth. G to B is going to be a major third, so that's a major triad. Represent that with a capital 3. Okay. My 4 chord in minor keys will usually be minor. My 5 chord, I'm going to go ahead and use that raised 7th because the 5 chord, because of its role, we have that leading tone as the third of the chord. So that's actually going to appear as a major triad. So even though I'm in a minor key, the 5 chord in both major keys and minor keys is usually, major keys always, but in minor keys usually going to appear as a major chord. Okay, our 6th chord, our submediant triad in minor keys, is actually going to turn out to be major. And our 7 chord, kind of like with the dominant, we want to make sure we have that leading tone present. With the leading tone chord, right, because it is still a leading tone chord, I again want to have that leading tone, which is going to mean that I've got actually another example of a diminished triad here. So our 7 chord is going to be a lowercase 7 and diminished. Again, just like in major keys and minor keys, the leading tone chord or the 7 chord is usually going to be represented as a diminished triad. And then, of course, my return to the tonic, which is, if I just look at the beginning here, was minor. That's just a return to my 1 chord. So these are the most typically encountered diatonic triads in minor keys.